took a lot of energy to get all the way up here. Sorry if I sound out of breath, but my body needed more oxygen to help get me to this point. But why? Where does the air go that we breathe in? And why is oxygen so important in the first place? Let's find out together in this episode all about the respiratory system. First, I need to take a break. Breathe in, breathe out. Oxygen goes in and carbon dioxide comes out. Sounds simple enough, but your respiratory system works every minute of every day to keep your blood oxygenated and your body alive. Our cells need oxygen to create energy to perform all of the tasks that they're specialized for. The human respiratory system is a network of organs that is responsible for taking in that oxygen we were talking about earlier and expelling or getting rid of carbon dioxide. As you inhale, air enters the body through the nose and passes through the nasal cavity, where the air is humidified, warmed, and filtered. This area and the majority of your respiratory system have cilia to help with the filtering. Cilia are little microscopic hair-like structures that act as a mucociliary escalator. They move rhythmically to transport mucus, trapped dust, particles, and germs away from the lungs and toward the throat to be swallowed or coughed up. Air then moves to the pharynx, located behind the nasal cavity. The pharynx is a tube-like passageway used also for food and liquid. Then we head through the larynx. This short, cartilaginous tube joins the pharynx and trachea and also houses the vocal cords. Then air moves through the trachea, which is a tube that is held open by rings of cartilage. The lungs are creating negative pressure every time you breathe, so the trachea needs those rings to help keep it open. Without them, it would collapse every time the pressure dropped, and you wouldn't be able to breathe. If you've ever choked on a poorly timed sip of water, coughed, hit your chest, and exclaimed, "It went down the wrong pipe," then your epiglottis has failed you. The epiglottis is a small flap of tissue that folds over the trachea, preventing your favorite soda or snack from entering your lungs, kind of like a little trapdoor. As the trachea reaches the lungs, the single tube divides in two, one smaller tube going to each of the lungs. These are bronchi. They then direct air, hopefully only air, if your epiglottis did its job, from the trachea to the lungs. There are two lungs, and each lung has sections called lobes. 3 lobes on the right and 2 on the left. The left lung really helps out by having only 2 lobes to make room for the heart, which is both generous and necessary. Inside the lungs, air travels onto smaller tubes called bronchioles, which taper down into progressively smaller tubes until they empty into the alveolar ducts and then dead end into tiny alveolar sacs. If you're still here liking this video, let us know and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Respiration is the chemical reaction used by cells to break down glucose or other nutrients in the presence of oxygen to produce chemical energy for cellular processes, producing carbon dioxide and water as waste products. Our bodies require oxygen for this process, but how does the oxygen in the air we breathe get into our cells? The answer is gas exchange. Let's zoom in and take a look at those alveolar sacs at the end of the respiratory tract. Each of these alveolar sacs contain alveoli, and this is where the gas exchange will actually occur. That's because these alveoli are made of super thin-walled cells, have a lot of surface area, are covered in a layer of moist mucus, and they have direct contact with capillaries. It's here that oxygen molecules dissolve in that moist mucus, diffuse across the epithelial cells, and then cross the single-layer membrane between the alveoli and capillaries to enter the bloodstream. Then blood carries oxygen to cells all around the body. But that's not it. Blood moving through the alveoli doesn't just take in oxygen gas. It also gets rid of another gas, carbon dioxide, at the same time. This is called gas exchange, exchanging oxygen for carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide then travels back through your bronchial tubes, up your trachea, and then out of your nose or mouth. Bye, carbon dioxide. See ya. You're taking in oxygen and getting rid of carbon dioxide, one molecule at a time across that thin membrane. But you're doing it in enormous quantities, pretty much every second. Your lungs are more like sponges than balloons and contain an average of 500 million alveoli, which together provide something like an amazing 75 square meters of moist membrane surface area. That's like an entire tennis court covered in a thin layer of slime. We have looked at the path air takes as it enters and leaves our lungs. Our lungs don't have any contractible muscle tissue, so how are they expanding and contracting? When we inhale and exhale. Breathing occurs using the diaphragm, a major muscle located under your lungs. You've probably been more aware of diaphragm movement if you've ever had the hiccups. Hiccups are a spasm in the diaphragm muscle. Here is a model to help us visualize what's happening. When the diaphragm contracts, it pulls downward, expanding the lungs and pulling air into the body. When the diaphragm relaxes, it rises upward, pushing air out of the body. The movement of the diaphragm contracting and pulling downward makes the pressure inside of your lungs lower than the pressure of the air outside your body. Fluids, like gases, move from areas of high pressure to low pressure. Because the pressure inside the lungs is lower, they fill up with outside air rushing in. Then the diaphragm relaxes again, and the weight of the ribs settles in, and the pressure inside the lungs becomes higher than the outside air, and the air rushes out. If you've ever wondered how much air your lungs hold, test your lung capacity with a simple balloon. First, fill your lungs by inhaling as much as you can. Then, exhale that air into a balloon. You can then measure the circumference of the balloon at its widest part to compare your lung capacity to others. When we think of respiration, the lungs usually get all of the attention. But like we learned earlier, they have a lot of help getting oxygen from out here in the air into our cells. The circulatory system plays its part in transporting the oxygen and carbon dioxide in blood throughout our body. But what about the skeletal system? Ribs are bones that protect the lungs like a cage surrounding them. Muscles of the muscular system are involved too. Muscles between your ribs are called intercostal muscles. They help expand or contract the space where the lungs fit. If you consciously think about your breathing, you can take voluntary control of this action or breathe on purpose. As you do this, you'll notice that most of the time your breathing is involuntary. You aren't consciously controlling it. You aren't telling your body to inhale and exhale each time, especially when you're sleeping. The nervous system is what regulates this, which is really fascinating, but for another video. Obviously, we've been learning about humans, but it's not just humans that have gas exchange. Amphibians have gas exchange through their skin, called cutaneous respiration, and fish can use gills to diffuse oxygen from the water they live in. So the next time you hike to the top of a canyon or successfully take a drink of water, remember to thank your respiratory system for not failing you. And if you want to learn more science, you can check out this video next. It's windy.
It's windy. Don't fall on me.
See you later, CO2.